Okay. Okay. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about this week was or is range so it's called Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And this is something that until I read this book, I had a the philosophy that and I have four children, and so I had the philosophy with these children that I wanted them to pick something early and then get good at it, and then they could potentially do that for the rest of their lives. And some of the examples that one of the top examples people would use would be Tiger Woods. You know, he started when he was three, winning golf tournaments when he was like 5 years old. That whole story. And so there are a lot of parents that are I am totally included in this group. We're trying to find things for my own children that would do the same thing. But in this book, he kind of turns that notion on its head. So he explains early in the book there's two kinds of learning environments, and one is called a kind learning environment, and this is where these environments give quick feedback. They have generally simple rules. Golf, chess are some of these things. Another one is being a pilot. You can you can become proficient at it. Just this also fits into the 10,000 hour rule that gets talked about occasionally. You may hear that if you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you'll become good at it. And that was made popular by Malcolm Gladwell. And Malcolm Gladwell, in his review of this book, said, I've never been so happy to have my ideas changed about these things. So that's a paraphrase, but he was saying he really enjoyed the idea that some of the things that he thought were wrong and that he needed to change. So we so the other learning environment is called a wicked learning environment where the rules aren't really clear. There's no delayed or no feedback, high variability, and one of the examples that he uses in the book is raising children. Every if you have children, they're all different. There's no set rules. There's no there. It's funny there are these types of instruction books out there um, about what to do with your kids and things like that, but all of the kids are different. Sometimes there's some good guidelines out there, but every child is different. It's a difficult situation. And then another one is entrepreneurship. Is if you're trying to start a business, just different things happen at different times. And so these are wicked learning environments. And so we need to be able to identify those two types of learning environments and understand which ones we're getting into. And so that we understand that there aren't specific rules if we're going into a wicked learning environment, that there aren't specific rules to success. And so the first example that he gives in the book, he talks about Tiger Woods, and there is a philosophy that Tiger uses called deliberate practice, which helped him get better. But then there's a tennis player that they talk about that when he started playing, he just liked sports that that had balls. So, you know, soccer, his both of his parents were actually tennis instructors and his mother was more serious about it. And she said that she was frustrated with him because he wasn't so much into learning how to do things better. He was just kind of there for the fun. And so he progressed to become the top tennis player in the world. And at one point, Tiger and him became friends. And so it was interesting how many different sports, and this was a Roger Federer, and it was interesting how many different sports he had tried as a youth, and his parents didn't think he was going to go anywhere because they didn't think he was that good. But he tried all these other things, but he said that tennis is a wicked learning environment where some of the skills he learned in other sports helped him in tennis. So so then they start to go across other he starts to use other examples in the book of people that have tried a bunch of different things. One of the things was there was a group of this was there was these in Venetia there were these groups of children that were and they were homeless children, and they were given the opportunity to play a bunch. They were I don't know if they were forced to, but by these schools run by nuns, and so they kept giving them different instruments to play. You know, the strings, winds, keyboards, uh, voice. They would rotate through them, and then when the students would find something that they liked, then they would kind of progress onto that. And these orphans became really good at. They had these symphony. They had a. I don't know if it was a symphony, but it was a group of these, and people would come from all over to listen to these orphans because they were so good. But it was they had started. They had just started young, experimenting with different instruments, and then they would find the instrument that was best for them. And so that was just an example of what we could possibly do. And then the last example that they used in range, and this was the culminating example. So this particular person started at age 16 as a as an art dealer, or he started to be trained as an art dealer. He hadn't done super well in school, so his parents put him in and started training him as an art dealer. And so that was in The Hague. And then when he was 28 years old, they had transferred him to London. When he got to London working there, and this was, and he didn't do very well at this. And so after a couple of years, and his uncle, I think, was running the art gallery there, let him go, said, you need to go try something else. So he tried several things after that for the next 4 years. So he was 23 at this time. He thought because he had lived in Germany and England, and he had spent some time in France, that he thought, I'll be a school teacher. So he became a school teacher at a place. He was really good. They promoted him to be like the schoolmaster of the place, and he did that for a little bit. But it ended up not working out for him, and I can't remember why, but it didn't work out for him. And so then he became a book, and I think he just didn't like dealing with people, so he became a bookseller clerk in the Netherlands. And something church, and it was a really seeing all of it. And let's see. Well, before. Okay. Sorry about that. Oh. So 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 he was a schoolmaster, fired him from that, was a bookseller, tried to do the bookseller thing for a bit, and then he was a missionary. And he was a missionary for, I don't even know if he was a full year, but he was a missionary to these mine workers in Belgium. And it was super hard because he was trying to help these miners, and it was just a depressing situation for him. And so the church authorities um, stopped supporting him and said, you need to find something else to do. So he, at age 28, he enrolled in some drawing lessons with a teacher in The Hague, and and that was the start of his art career. So he was 28. He tried all these other things, and he had been in Paris too, and seen some of the impressionists. And so then he started painting. And during his life, if you know, this is Vincent van Gogh, he only sold one painting. And but all the stuff that he did, now his art is the most expensive art in the world. So he came up with his own style, but they are David Epstein is making the judgment here that through all these different experiences, he was able to see things that no other artist had seen before. So, so those are just examples of why we all need to just keep trying different things. And then a good pattern for the way that we try things, I think, is the designing your life book. So in the designing your life book, it's got it's got this outline for how to use the design. They call it design thinking. And both Bill Burnett and Dave Evans use this book as a semester class, basically. And so they have students go through this process, and the process. So you've got to start with your design thinking, and during this design thinking, then you are building a compass. Find out what is important to you, what where your values are, where your beliefs, what you want work to be. And then this is the compass that is going to point you to whatever you choose or whatever path you choose. And I would call this a path and not necessarily to get on a to use this to be the direction throughout your life. And so during your life or during our lives, we need to constantly be reassessing to see, hey, am I going the direction I want to? And then if you get to a point, or if we get to a point where we think something needs to change, then we can change it. We don't, that's one of the things that they talk about is we don't want to get ourselves stuck in something that we can't progress or move forward. So one of the things that they talk about is there's a couple of problems that we have in life, and one of them is they call a gravity problem. And they said, there's ways that you can overcome gravity, but it's really expensive, and you can do it for short amount of time. But for the most part, you don't want to try to change gravity. You can kind of overcome the effects of it, but you don't really want to change gravity. So one of the examples that they use over and over and over again in the book is if you're working at a company that's a family owned company, and the last three CEOs have been, the son of the guy before, there's no chance if you want to be a CEO, well, there's little to no chance that you're going to be a CEO in this company because of that. They call that a gravity problem. And so when we're looking at problems in our lives, we have to think, can I change that? And the answer to most of them is yes, but if it's a gravity problem, you might as well just leave that alone and figure out a way around it or just deal with it. And then you need to find the problems that we have some control over. And they go through this process and they call it prototyping, where you come up with a plan and then just start testing it out. And you don't need to, like, if you want to change jobs, you don't necessarily need to change jobs. You just start talking to people that have jobs that you think you want. You ask them what it's like. You find out the jargon and the lingo, and you talk to lots of people. The one example that they use in a book is a guy did 109 of these conversations with people, kind of kept in touch with them, but over that 109, he got something like 12 job offers. So he never submitted a resume. All he did was talk to these people, and some of them liked him and said, I think you know what you're doing. And so when they did find a job at Discovery, they'd call me back and say, hey, we've got this job. Go ahead and, I've already talked to somebody. We'll just bring you in for the interview process. You know, and a lot of times in that situation, he's getting job offers when he's not, when they're not really looking for jobs. He's just trying to prototype his life. And so one of the things too that they talk about is design three different scenarios for your own life. Where do you want to be in the next 5 years? And start with crazy big ideas and then find things that you think can work and then go out and prototype a little bit to find out, okay, where can I do this? One of the examples in the book talks about this guy. He's working for a rental car company and he feels kind of stuck where he is, but as he's going through this prototyping process, he finds out that they have locations in other places. And one of the things that he wanted to do, one of his kind of crazy goals, is he wanted to start a surf camp. And he found out that his company had locations in Hawaii and he was able to transfer to Hawaii. And once he got there, he could do more of these things where he could work with kids and actually work. I don't know if he got a surf camp, but he was able to work with kids and able to work with surfing later on in his life. So one of the things they talk to about is don't be afraid to fail at things. As we're prototyping, as we just go through these short steps, if we the more feedback we can get, the earlier we can get, the quicker we can fail, the better we're going to be at designing the kind of direction we're going to go. So with designing your life and with range, I think going to the library, I read both of these books first, just through the library. Now I looked up Range by David Epstein here. I may have, yeah. So there's you can get the book and listen to the book. I think that's the thing I did first, but I really liked it, and then got the book through Audible, and so I listen to it occasionally. And then Designing Your Life, a lot of times it's between $10 and $15, and so the first time that I read through it, I checked it out from the library, extended the thing a couple of times. Then you can see that, um, and occasionally when my friends lose their jobs or they're looking for another job, I'll buy a copy and give it to give it to my friends. So this is something, but I would suggest first checking out from the library. I have I've really done I've read through this book twice with the serious um, idea to change careers, and both times I found better jobs by going through this process. So, so another book that I wanted to talk about that's kind of a fun read is there's an author. His name's Stephen Pressfield, and he has this book called The War of Art, and this is more of a nonfiction self-help type of book. But he has written other books. This Gates of Fire, this story of the Battle of Thermopylae. If I don't know, does anyone know about the Battle of Thermopylae? So this is the movie 300 was based on this story. I don't necessarily know it was based on Stephen Pressfield's book, but it's where the 300 Spartans went up against the Phoenician army. There was like 2 million, and they basically shut them down just because there was this small pass that they were supposed to go through, and these 300 Spartans held them off long enough that the army basically had to go back because they couldn't keep that many people supplied. So this book. So he wrote, and this is a fantastic book, audiobook. I love the guy who reads this. It's just fantastic. So he's done the fiction part, but then he does this War of Art, which is such an interesting idea. The that as we're as we're trying to change our lives or design what's going on in our lives, he comes up with this term in this War of Art called resistance. He said anytime we're trying to make a good change in our lives, there's this resistance that comes up. And he calls it, there's all kinds of things that it fear, procrastination, distractions impact our creative process. And I believe, like Stephen Pressfield talks about in this book, that each of us has something that is like we're that it's is our gift that we can share with the world. And he talks about that we need to find what that gift is and then become a he talks about this an amateur and a professional. He wrote a book called The Legend of Bagger Vance. It's a movie turned into a movie. And he talks about this. He likes sports analogies in here. And so he said, if you're moving from being an amateur artist to a professional, he said, you just need to put in the time. He said, you need to show up every day and work on whatever your calling is. And for him, because he was a writer, he would start at like 8 or 9 in the morning and then he would work until 1 or 2. And he said, then I'm done. I showed up. I waited for the inspiration. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but that's what he does. And I've also heard, and I don't know if you're familiar with Brandon Sanderson and his books. He's written a lot of books. I'm somewhere between 30 and 50 books he's written, and he sold out of all of his books, he sold like 50 million copies. And he has a similar process where he has a certain amount of words he has to write every day. Jerry Seinfeld had a similar. Jerry Seinfeld said, "I have to write 2,000 words every day to, keep my art moving forward." So this is one of the things. So taking all these things into account, we need to try different things. We need to be prototyping and experimenting, and then we need to also realize, like we're talking about here in the War of Art, that there is going to be resistance to what our calling in life is. And so we need to recognize that and try to figure out ways to, well, we need to recognize when that resistance is keeping us from uh, doing more with what we should be doing, working with our gift.
So I read this book and I've literally purchased six more copies for different friends. It's a fantastic read. It's super short, actually. Probably, I mean, depending on if I should read like a couple days or a couple weeks, if you just read a little bit here and there. But um, I think kind of like what you've already been touching on. No matter what you do, you can find a relation to this book, but it's like you talked about your calling, but so whatever it is you think you want to do, writing or I do photo and video stuff and painting or but I have friends that do other things. A friend that's an entrepreneur, friend, like that dances, people that write screenplays and stuff like that. And anyways, I've sent it to each of them. Anybody that I can think of that I feel like I see them like struggling and but I know there's talent there and I know that they have something to offer, but you can see what did he call the those setbacks? What did you say again?
The resistance, or
Resistance, yeah. So
yeah,
just putting putting that into words, and it just does so much to your brain to like anytime, like say for example you want to write and um I don't know, you're getting, messages or whatever, like so yeah, you're turning off your phone or like um whatever it might be, like you need to tell your wife or your kids or your friends or your family or whatever to just like let you have this amount of time, but set aside some time to do the thing that you want to do and don't allow yourself to have interruptions. I think it was gosh, I want to say it's Theo Vaughn, whatever you think of him, he's kind of silly, but he talks about waking up and just going in the kitchen and just putting like ear plugs in and like not letting people talk to him for the first while because he needs to concentrate on what he wants to do, whatever. But again, no matter what you do, whether you're a comedian or a writer or like an actor or you do art, and to me, I just find the word art in so many things. You can, like, especially if you have passion, like you can you could make an argument that so many things, almost everything is an art, right? So, but when you have a passion for something like that, to me, this book really just like makes you just narrow it down and focus on doing the art. And it's a weird thing that I have like tried to be introspective in myself and my artworks, and like I also do music and stuff too, but there are things that this is gonna sound like super out there, and it is, but like I feel like the universe sort of wants to like channel through people, and you can call that like weird, but like somehow you can think of a one-hit wonders or whatever, but just something like made Hanson write Mbop, or like Jimi Hendrix like write like something like amazing. And some of them do it more often than others, and some of them only do it once. But like when you get that calling, and the universe or yourself, or the why I say the universe is you can't really put your finger on why you want to do a thing, like why anybody does a thing, but it's just there. And I think that you need to take advantage of it and make it happen. And I think this book really brings it home for how to do that and like how important it is for you to make yourself do that. And sorry, I know that was a big rant, but I just anybody else who's like this book is fantastic for so many people.
I I look at it. I look at it. It's got a 3.9 rating. I'm like, who is not liking this book? Because it speaks to everyone. I have done a lot of software development in my life, and so I feel that is part of what what the universe wants me to do. It's like forced me into that, but I really like it, and I get into the state of flow with software development just as much as I get into it when I do ceramics. And so, just like you're saying, there's so many forms. For my wife, she likes to do quilts, which is an art thing, and um, she likes to cook, and she's really good at it. And so those are some of her callings. But another calling that she has is taking care of children. She is just so intent and so aware of what children's needs are that that that's part of her calling. And so it's just like you're saying, the universe has things that it wants us to be doing. I love that he talks about it that way. He's like, the universe wants you to be doing something, but then there's this resistance that's coming from the universe too, that's trying to keep you from doing whatever gift that you have been given. And so, yeah, it's fun to talk to you for people who've read it and really like it. It rings true with me too. So.
And on that note, of course, everyone that I have bought it for, because it's so important to me, and I think that the message that this book has to say is so important that I've literally like said, "What's your address?" and I go on Amazon and I send it to their house. Like honestly, like six different friends I've done that for, and every single one of them there's been a couple who like, oh yeah, I'll get on that, and then a couple months goes by and they like haven't, and then all of a sudden they pick it up. But I think once you start reading it, even the first, you know, I don't know, 20 page, 5, 10, 20 pages, like you're like, oh, this is for me and this does speak to me because again, it doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna find something you can relate to, I promise you.
Yeah. And it's like because I'm a little bit older and I've been in lots of different situations, but I think people who are mechanics are good at it. People who, my son has worked in construction, and the funny thing is he likes to drive trucks. And so, and he actually is an airline pilot now, which is basically just a truck driver. But he loves it, and he just loves the machinery and the equipment. And so it's just his calling. I can tell that he talks about that just like the rest of us talk about, like the way I talk about ceramics or software development. And so I really do think that this is why I brought this one up at the end. Is this will help you kind of find what you're doing if you listen to the universe and figure out where the resistance is coming from. I think that's part of the process. Is if you can see where where the resistance is pushing against you, then you need to push back and push forward on that.
And also
So
just one last little note about it. So as an artist, and I assume there's probably everyone else is also an artist in this class if they're interested in design in one way or another. But um, I think especially as you go along in your artistic journey, you you kind of learn some things, but one huge thing that I've learned within myself is that creativity is there when the universe wills it, or when creativity wants to be there, and you don't necessarily get to choose when that happens. And so not stepping up and taking advantage or getting rid of those distractions or oh God, what did you say that word was again? For some reason,
resistance.
resistance. Yeah, getting rid of those resistances, and again, just putting words to it, and like saying like, oh, that's resistance popping in. Like we need to, stop that. But also just stepping up and those silly things like, um, I all the time, like if I have a thought for for a movie idea or a story or something, I will in the middle of the night, like I've learned that, even if I'm tired and it's 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning, like I get up and I pull out I have a digital recording device or my phone and I just speak what I say because you always like think like, oh, I'll just remember that when I wake up and that was such a great idea and whatever. But like you don't a lot of times. But then also, you know, you can't just sit down and just paint something awesome sometimes, and it just sort of comes when it wants to, and it can come and last for 5, 10 or 20 years, or maybe some people's whole life. You think of Leonardo or Michelangelo or some like amazing artists of the past or whatever. But not for everyone. And I something that I've found in myself that it's just hit or miss, and it could be the weather or like whatever's going on. But when the universe calls and says like, here's an opportunity, and I'm going to give you this room in your brain to develop this idea, like you got to jump on it right then or
Yeah.
as soon as you can and not put it off.
One of the things I would like to add is Stephen Pressfield talks about just showing up every day. And so if once you once we find our callings, we need to show up every day and do something to push that work forward. And so just schedule, like, he went full time as a writer at one point in his life, and so he just showed up. And so I think we all need to do that, is schedule time every day to work on whatever we believe our gift is. Whatever the universe wants us to be doing, we need to show up every day. And because the inspiration, just like you say, the inspiration, we never know when that's going to hit. And like you're saying, we need to move on that when it happens, but we just need to show up and expect the inspiration to show up occasionally or sometimes more often than that. It's fun to listen to. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell did with Paul Simon, and and I think that was kind of, he just got in tune with whatever, wherever that creative juice was coming from, and it's just been with him his whole life. So it's fun to listen to his kind of process, kind of what he's done, and he just happened to hit a lot of times with things that where he was just there for the inspiration, but he just kept working at it. So, oh, the last thing I wanted to add, this is the last thing I want to add is each of us need to be investing on a regular basis. And so the the one thing that I do this with every class, but if you invest $20 a week when you're 20, how much money will you have when you're 65 if you invest $20 a week? Any ideas? Have we talked about this before? And can you still hear me?
Well, I did the math and it says $43,200, but of course, if you do it with investing and getting interest and stuff, it's going to be different.
Yeah, so if you put it into low cost index funds, and it's funny with ChatGPT, it will give you index funds to try out. If you're looking at here, let me see. I'd look this up. See, that's not it. So I know that the figures. So it's so if it's there is several different. Oh, I went really big. I was looking at how long it would take to get to 700 million with $20 a week. But surprisingly short, anywhere from 120 years to 140 years. But if you just $20 a week, by the time you're 65, you'll have over $1 million. If you invest in these low cost index funds, not some other fund, just the index funds. And so, and if you wait until you're 75, then you're like into the $2 or $3 million or $5 million or something like that. But it's just $20 a week. I wish somebody would have told me that when I was, because I could have afforded $20 a week 25 years ago when I was 20. No, that was when I was 30. I could have afforded if it was 35 years ago when I was 20. And so if I would have done that, what's interesting is by this time, if I would have done $20 just in index funds when I was 20, right now I would have about 300,000. But with that 300,000 over the next 10 years, it's going to be $1 million. And so this is just, I'm not a financial advisor, but you can go out there and do a little research and start investing as little as $20 a week into index funds. And if a lot of places where you work, you can get into a 401k. If you're just working for yourself, you can do a Roth IRA, and the Roth IRA is the same thing. You can put the $20 a week in, and you can get it so it just automatically comes out of your bank account every week. You can get your $20 going in there, and then you just have to let it ride. So there's on the low side, you'll have like 700,000, or sorry, yeah, you'll have 700 or 800,000 in if you get unlucky. And when I say unlucky, that's if you go with the lowest percentage that the lowest percentage index fund has had. And the index funds have changed over the time, but Warren Buffett actually says the same thing. Just invest every month or every week. Just invest every week, and you're going to get 7 to 10% return on your money. And by the time you're 65, you'll have $1 million. So that's my last little pitch out there for you is find a way to get that $20 in your $20 every week into an index fund. And ChatGPT and Gemini, which is Google's version of that, they'll all just say, "Hey, I want to start investing in index funds. What would you suggest?" And it will give you like who should I talk to, what companies are good, what index funds should I look for, and it'll give you all of that information. So so that's it for the class. I appreciate everyone's uh, participation. And so that's it. Thanks for everything. And best of luck to all of you.
Are
And
we
I'm
doing
always,
class next week or is this the last one?
this is the last one.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. It's been a really great class. I loved listening. I last week I freaking it was like 8 o'clock and I'm like, oh my God, class, and then I ran on and you guys must have been off, but I totally
Yeah.
spaced it last week, so I was pretty bummed, but
Yeah.
really,
So
really good class.
I haven't posted the recording for that yet, but I'll post it.
Right on.
So
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been really great.
cool. Appreciate it. It's great to get to know all of you a little bit better. So best of luck. And I'm always available if you need anything later on. I have suits occasionally that will reach back to me and need a recommendation or looking for a class or something. So I
Awesome.
can help out. All right.
Awesome.
Take
Yeah,
care,
thank you
everybody.
again. Okay, bye-bye.